Man, it just ain't Halloween without Scream Fortress. Unless you're talking about like 2007 or 2008, which was before the event started. And even then, the first Halloween event in 2009 wasn't actually called Scream Fortress. Also, I guess Halloween as a thing probably existed before TF2, but we don't talk about that. But Scream Fortress has become like a staple of the game. It's great, it's always fun. Behind summer and Christmas updates, they've always been the consistent third big one. But I guess summer and Christmas updates aren't really as consistent as they used to be. Every year still has a Halloween though. Every year since 2009. It's actually been pretty important even to the TF2 storyline. We learn a whole lot more about the Mann family, what happened to Delmain's eye, Marasmus has become a fairly important character, and we find out what happens to Redmond and Plutarch after they're killed. Sort of. A whole bunch of interesting stuff. But it's not really much of a secret that the TF2 team has kind of stepped back on Halloween in favor of more community-created stuff. Which, like a lot of things in more recent years, can kind of be a mixed bag. Since 2015, we've gotten more Halloween content added each year than we ever did with the primarily Valve-made updates. Minus 2017. But at the same time, the maps and events created by the TF2 team are usually far more intricate and add a lot more truly new stuff. So let's just take a little trip down memory lane for comparison's sake. But wait a minute, that's not memory lane, it's Elm Street! And it's my understanding that spooky stuff happens there. Don't take my word for it, you can ask Dracula, who's right behind you! Ooh. Okay, so Halloween events began in 2009 with Team Fortress's Haunted Halloween Special. It added both the brand new map of Harvest and the spooky variant of Harvest Event. Of course, this being the first Halloween, it was the first to add the Dynamite Pumpkin Bomb and the Crypt Pumpkins and the ghost of Zephaniah Man. And you could even get Zephaniah's hat. A little thing called the Ghastly Gibbous. Maybe you've heard of it. And it was originally obtained by finding a hidden page that would give them out to the first 10,319 people to visit it. But the first Halloween event was a fine update, though it's rather quaint by today's standards. 2010 Scream Fortress was the one that brought the Horseless Headless Horseman, and it's great. This was the first one that I played when it was new, and it's still probably my favorite. It introduced the first character to fight that wasn't just another class. Silas Mann is still roaming around the Mann family manor, but this time without a head. And even worse, without a horse. And yeah, I think he's a great boss character. He just likes going around chopping heads, and you gotta respect him for that. He also doesn't halt the flow of the game, but just kind of becomes an obstacle to either attack or avoid, and it's fun. This Scream Fortress also of course added some hats, the new description tag, gift wrap, and the first noise maker. Remember those? And it also added the sticky jumper, making it the first and only Halloween update to add a non-reskinned weapon. 2011 took the whole boss monster thing to its obvious conclusion. A giant eyeball, but one with a health bar. And it acts more of like an actual boss fight, where the horseman is more of just kind of a hazard. Minoculus essentially stops the game until he's either defeated or he leaves. It's a fun fight, but it does get a bit old after a while. This was also the first Scream Fortress not to include a brand new map alongside a reskinned Halloween one. The first year added Harvest, the second one added Mountain Lab, but this just used the already existing Viaduct. And maybe most importantly, this was the year that introduced Marasmus as a character, even if he wasn't actually in the game. Scream Fortress 4 put Marasmus in the game. And the fight with him is far more interesting, at least I think so. Where Minoculus just kind of floats around and shoots at you, Marasmus has several different attacks. There's just a lot more to actually do during the fight. And he was not easy to beat. Everyone on the server really had to work together, at least during the first year. Sort of unfortunately, they made him weaker later on by increasing the damage certain classes did against him and then lowering his health, and then eventually they added the truce mechanic, which I'm not really crazy about. But it's still a cool fight though. This year also added Wave 666 in Man vs. Machine, and that's a lot of fun too. It's a shame they never really did anything like it afterwards. Scream Fortress 5 would be the first not to feature a new boss character since, well, the first Scream Fortress. This year's gimmick was spells. Oh, and I guess there were like skeletons and the king is kind of like a boss, but eh. I just remember at the time being super excited that every single class, including Pyro, got brand new voice lines just for this update. Even if Pyro sounded super weird at the time. It's pretty rare to get new voice lines for every single class in one update, but it's always cool when it happens. And yeah, the spells are cool too, but I don't think they're as fun as the boss fights. It was still a good change of pace though. This was also the year that added over 100 cosmetic items. And they made it very clear ahead of time that anything added during Halloween would be restricted instead of the previous year's some are and some aren't. This also carried over into the next year, but in 2015, none of them were restricted. And more recently, it's gone back to some are and some aren't. We have a hockey mask for Scout that's restricted, and a hockey mask for Pyro that's not. At this point, I think they'd be better off just going back and unrestricting some of the not super Halloween-y ones. Scream Fortress 6 was the one with the bumper cars, and the bonus ducks. And it's fine. I recall at the time it wasn't super well received, but looking back and playing it again, I think it's just fine. The event version of Doomsday is nothing really special, but the bumper car games are usually fun enough. And Marasmus is back, which is cool, but maybe he started overstaying his welcome a little bit by this point. Scream Fortress 7 was the first not to include any Valve-made maps. Well, that's not entirely true. It added Hellfire for manpower. Nobody cares, do they? It didn't add any new Valve Halloween maps, is what I mean. But it did add 4 new community Halloween maps and continued 2015's new contract system with Miraz missions. Aside from maybe Hellstone, none of the new community maps really do anything too crazy, but I think that's completely fine. One of the best parts about any Halloween map is just how cool they look. I think the Gorge event is great. It doesn't really have to do anything too special. Though for Hellstone, I will say I don't think Payload really works as well with all the Halloween stuff going on. I think it's just a bit too much. When you've got the spells and the crit pumpkins and the exploding pumpkins and the occasional boss that shows up, it's just like constant death to things that you can't really control. And obviously, I know that's part of the Halloween fun, but when there's a longer way to walk to the fight and a bunch of choke points, I don't really think it works as well. Overall, though, I think the first Halloween without something new made by the TF2 team was really well done. Scream Fortress 8 was essentially just a continuation of the last one, with 3 new community maps, new hats, contracts, and it was fine. Pit of Death is cool. It's always good to see new player destruction maps. A good Halloween, but nothing super special. Now, Scream Fortress 9. Scream Fortress 9 added basically nothing new at all. Not even new hats. But I guess it was kinda hard to be mad at the time, because Jungle Inferno came out just like a week before. Still though, I think if you were ranking them, this year would probably come in last. Just maybe. Last year's not-so-great event caused a bit of concern that we might have a repeat for this year, but Scream Fortress 10 is another good, effectively community-made update. With 5 new maps, it's arguably the biggest one too. I still can't say I'm super fond of Gravestone because I think it still has the Halloween payload problems, but the rest are really fun. The amount of effort and care put into Cursed Cove is fantastic. A lot of good stuff. And at this point, I'm curious to know which year had your favorite Halloween content, and which Scream Fortress was your first. Let me know. While not getting any new Valve-made stuff anymore is a bit of a bummer, I think the way they've handled it is A-okay. It's in good hands. The community map makers do some super creative and interesting stuff, and I'm glad to see it get in. Even if the TF2 team were properly staffed, I can't imagine that it would be easy to come up with new Halloween gimmicks every single year and try to have it be as good, if not better, than the previous one. Who knows though, we might still see another Valve-made Halloween event in the future. I kind of doubt it, but it's possible. I really hope that the lack of Valve-made stuff means one giant Christmas update is coming in December. With some new heavy weapons, maybe? We'll just have to wait and see. Now go eat some candy and play Team Fortress or something. Happy Halloween, buckos! Oh no, Dracula's still right behind you. Turn around. Ah!